say that it's an honor to be part of this and to be standing here is a massive understatement. It is a thrill. Sidney Hillman's life, as you saw in the video, represents everything I could hope to achieve in my lifetime, making visible the day-to-day grit and grind of social injustice, making solutions possible, actionable, irresistible, bringing people together to make change happen for themselves. It is a thrill to be presented with the chance to read so many startling, mind-altering submissions, so many of which were at that intersection of identity and social justice. And it is a special thrill to honor powerful storytelling combined with relentless investigation, journalism that moves the needle on the public good and leads us somewhere brand new. I'm talking, of course, about Desmond Cole's The Skin I'm In, which was published less than a year ago in Toronto Life, and the foundation on which it was built, the Toronto Star's 2015 series, Known to Police. Now, most of us would agree, a story that had been no secret for years reached a tipping point when Desmond's piece came out. It was such a vivid read. Have any of you read it in this crowd? The Skin I'm In put all of us in his skin. Desmond brought us with him into the story step by step, incident by incident, and you just couldn't help ask yourself, what would I do? How would I react to what happened to Desmond? Well, what Desmond did was biblical. He bore witness. And the rock on which Desmond Cole stood was the Toronto Star, which built that case starting in 2002, piece at a time, building in 2012 and 2013, 2014, reaching a crescendo with in-depth and in critical articles last year showing that police policies were riddled with systemic bias, and this process of documenting innocent people was widespread. Now, the combination of that work, Star's work and Desmond's, achieved something we haven't seen in years in this city. They fueled a wholly legitimate groundswell of concern about police abuse of powers and racial profiling, issues that sadly are not going to go anywhere anytime soon. And they triggered talk about change that was possible, not just in Toronto, but across this country. What Desmond Cole did as a journalist and as a person was brave. It was in fact incendiary. He stood up to the police. He made himself the face of an issue. What Jim Rankin, Wendy Gillis, San Grewal, Royson James, Andrew Bailey, and Heidi Ng did was to gather the kindling which Desmond's voice lit. He ignited a movement. Together, they turned on the lights. They revealed the systemic and deeply personal nature of the controversial practices and outcomes of police carding. They showed us we're not so different as we think from our southern neighbors. And that story certainly doesn't end with carding. Did you know that 35% of all deaths by police since 1990 are Black lives? The slaying of Yusemi Yatim by police at least led to a court case. Today, we're dealing with a police force that refuses to divulge the name of the officer who shot Andrew Loku to death. From forcing profound debate on whether carding can ever be justified to exposing the dirty details of death by police, Desmond Cole and the Toronto Star team have put the public firmly at the heart of public policy. The rise of Black Lives Matter, that movement in Toronto, and the increasingly obvious solidarity of it with the missing and murdered Indigenous women's movement, the idea that we can be none of us idle no more. This year's honorable mention shows how consistently presenting the facts like a steady drumbeat over the months, over the years, can make injustice unsustainable. So on the eve of our 150th anniversary as a nation, I can think of no greater honor and no greater public good that Canada's journalists can offer us than forcing us to reflect on what it means to be a Canadian and making second-class citizenship unacceptable in this beautiful country. Great journalism challenges us to reflect on what we, each of us, do in the face of injustice. Desmond and the Toronto Star challenges us, like Sidney Hillman did, to act on the knowledge that you don't have to be in power to have power. You journalists in this room, you've got the power. It's been said there's no justice, it's just us. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome just one of us who is creating more justice in this country, Desmond Cole.
Thank you so much to the Hillman Foundation. Thank you to the judges, especially Armin, for that wonderful, wonderful introduction and synthesis of why we've been invited here this evening. Thank you to everyone for coming. I think the first thing I should say is that I'm so honored to be on this stage, but it's particularly nice to see that the category that I was in is acknowledging the stories of missing and murdered Indigenous women and the incredible journalism in the last year that's been done around that. It's about time. I feel like there's something happening with some of our movements in Canada, and it's just an honor to be a part of that. I want to talk about my squad here. They're hiding a little bit right now, but they shouldn't be, because they should be right out here with me. I was chosen to speak, but it's very, very important. Armin called the Toronto Star's work through Known to Police, the investigation about carding, to be the rock that I built my story upon, and I actually can't put it any better than that. Why aren't you writing? You are, I know you are. It's true that I couldn't be up here standing talking to you today and receiving this honor if it wasn't for the tireless work of the Toronto Star, and not just the folks behind me, but 3 others who couldn't be here with us this evening, a whole team of people who dedicated themselves to holding our police to account, to finding out exactly, in as much detail as they could, the ways in which police justify their decisions to stop civilians on the street, to ask them all kinds of personal information about themselves, to take that personal information and to document it in databases so that the next time that they encounter that person, there is a record, a non-criminal one, mind you, that's being built up over and over and over again. We know that carding disproportionately affected a lot of different groups in Toronto, but particularly folks in my community, the Black community. And you see that none of the folks on the stage here next to me are Black, but they cared what was happening to us. You guys cared enough to fight for years for that information and to make sure that it was available to the public. And I want to say I respect so deeply the work that you're doing, and I'm so honored to share this with you guys. Thank you. For my own part, I know that I live in a country that prides itself on all kinds of words that I don't actually have any time for. Words like multiculturalism, diversity, inclusion, right? I question all of these words. Who gets to include who? I question all of these terms that we use, because I know that stories like the one that I told for Toronto Life are told every day by Black people in this city and in this region and in this country, and they are not believed. It was a great privilege to be put on the cover of a magazine in Toronto talking about a policing issue and how deeply it affected me personally. But it's very important for me, giving this microphone tonight, to tell you that so many other people have told the same stories and they have not been believed. They have not been listened to and given a platform the way that I was given a platform. And so I want to acknowledge the great privilege that I carry in being able to get my story out and having it be listened to, and to say that it was never really about me getting vindication by people listening to my story, although I was overwhelmed. I still am overwhelmed that people will come up to me on the sidewalk, on the streetcar, wherever I am in public and say, are you the guy who was on the cover of that magazine? It's a deep, deep honor, especially the Black people in my community who are watching all of this. But there are so many stories yet to be told, yet to be acknowledged as mine was. The only other thing I can say this evening is that it's very, very fortuitous that we are gathered here at a time when Black Lives Matter Toronto have been holding space at police headquarters now for 11 straight days and nights. They are doing that because on July 5th of last year, a Black man, a 45-year-old father of 5 named Andrew Loku was shot and killed by the Toronto police. And as Armin said, the police were cleared of any charges in that incident, but we don't even know the name of the officer who took Andrew Loku's life. We have a special investigations unit that I believe is deeply flawed and is not providing the kind of accountability that we need. And people in my community believe that so strongly that they're willing to put their bodies on the line, to go out in an ice storm and sleep outside of police headquarters until we get justice for Andrew Loku and for all people who have been victimized by police brutality. It is not an easy subject to talk about, but it is affecting my community so deeply and that's why you see the commitment and the resolve that you see out there. So I want to leave you guys by saying that the Black Lives Matter movement, as it is manifesting itself in Toronto, is one of the most important things that's happened for me as a Black person in this country since I've been alive. And I want all of you in this room who are journalists to think about how you can help find some of the stories that I'm talking about that have yet to be told and make sure that people hear them in a way that my story was heard. So Black Lives do matter, and thank you so much for this award.